so I don't forget that. Okay, we are now recording. Please know if you do have your cameras on, we might see you. If you say anything, we might hear you. That would be on the recording. I will be deleting the class recordings at the end of the semester after we're all done with everything. So you don't have to worry about any questions you ask living forever on YouTube. Those will get deleted at the conclusion of the semester. But thanks, you guys. Please don't feel you have to have your cameras on any longer if you don't want to. I just enjoy when I actually see that there's real people there and not just names on a screen that I'm talking to. So what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to spend just a few minutes, not very long, giving to you what I call the last lecture. And this will be basically some closing thoughts for you guys, and nothing in this lecture will be on the exam. This is just a little bit of me talking to you guys. We will then do some review of the some of the concepts we've dealt with in the second part of the semester, but I will talk a lot about what we're going to do on the final exam. Much of what will be on the exam will be very similar to what was on the midterm. So I don't think we have to spend a lot of time going over that. We did that before. You have the study guide from that before. I've repeated all of that on the study guide, and we went over the test. So hopefully you guys have that, and when we went over the test, that was recorded. So I'm not even going to need to share my screen. I don't really have anything to share my screen for. So if you guys are okay with it, I'm just going to go ahead and get started so we can get out of here at a reasonable time. I see at least one thumbs up, and I'm going to take that as a good sign. So we're just going to motor on ahead. So I've got to say, this has been a semester really unlike any other that we've had before, and it's actually a bit like spring, except that we were locked down the whole semester. Spring, we at least started with real classes, and then we then went remote. But this semester, we've done the whole semester this way. And for those that are going to be around for spring semester, it looks like probably spring is going to be the same thing. I want to bring up a concept that I'd like you to think about, and it's the concept of collateral beauty. There was a movie by this name. I'm not talking about the movie, but I'm talking about the concept of it. I'm going to explain that in a few minutes. You guys will forever be thought of as students who were in college during COVID-19. In the same way that I think the closest, I don't think there's been anything in my lifetime that is close to this, but the closest was when I was a very young kid and my older brother and his older friends went to college during the 60s. That's probably the closest of a generation going off to college and having a collective experience this way. You know, when I went to San Diego State, the closest collective experience was we drank a lot of beer. It was nothing like you guys have gone through. I think it's been strange. I think it's at times been difficult, at times been challenging, but we made it through. We made it through, I think, pretty well. I can tell you guys, no matter what people end up doing on the final exam, I don't think there's a single person who has to worry about failing this class. I'm hoping that you've learned some things along the way. I've hoped you've learned some things about branding and marketing and advertising and communicating. I think if you go into branding or marketing, I'm hoping you've learned some things that you can apply. If you don't go into branding and marketing, but you go into management positions, or maybe you start up a business and you're entrepreneurs, I'm hoping that you learn some things that you can use along the way. Excuse me. And maybe, just maybe, there's been a little bit of sage advice that I've given between my corny stories that I've told you guys through the semester. The term collateral damage is a term that we use when we do some kind of act. It could be a terrorist act. It could be an act of war. And something happens to either innocent people or innocent property. And they refer to that as collateral damage, damage to people or things that were not intended. Well, if you sort of start with that and then you think of the concept of collateral beauty, it's the flip side of that. It's when something really bad happens, but you can find something good out of it. And maybe you can find ways that you will be enjoying yourself during very difficult times. And that's what I want you to look for. I want to bring up a brief concept. I may have mentioned it once in class before, but I'm just going to mention it very briefly. And it's called surge capacity. And there's a science reporter who reported on who, when COVID started, excuse me, this was like the Super Bowl for him, reporting on science, reporting on medicine. And about 2 or 3 months into COVID, he found himself being very depressed. And he talked to some psychologists about this. He was a scientist himself. And so he wanted to try and learn, if he could, what was going on. And one of the psychologists made reference to the concept of surge capacity. And if you think of sort of an emergency situation that maybe you've been in, an earthquake, a hurricane, a fire, something like that, we've learned that as humans, we can rise to that occasion. It's what explains when somebody has a little extra strength, you know, to lift a log off of somebody who has fallen or lift some rubble off of somebody in an earthquake. And we might care for our family or loved ones or help innocent bystanders during an earthquake or a fire or a flood. And we have this capacity where our energy is surging for a day or 2 days or maybe 3, but usually most of those emergencies, after a couple days, they subside. And most people, when that happens, they almost collapse with fatigue. Their body has risen to the occasion and they sort of collapse with fatigue. But what they find is, what they have found with COVID is the surge has been going on this whole time. And you can't stay surged at a high level for a long time. We also haven't known when the end of this is happening. So nobody in our generation has really been through something quite like this. Well, what this guy found, and talked to a number of psychologists, what he determined is the best way to get through this is to not try to replace everything that's missing. You guys can't have the same college experience that you had a year ago. And it's probably going to last one more semester. I think fall next year, most schools will probably be back to somewhat normal. We can't travel the way we wanted to. I've got some friends of my daughter. My daughter's a junior in college right now, and friends that want to take a year off because they said, I don't want to do Zoom classes anymore. And I said to them, what are you going to do? You know, you might be able to get a job. It's probably not going to be a great job. And you can't go travel everywhere. In fact, there's a lot of places you cannot travel to. And even if you can, you're going to potentially, you know, do a 2-week quarantine every country you go into. So you can't replace all of those things. But what this guy found out is replace little things. See if you can't find a few little things along the way. Find some kind of art that you like. Find some music that you like. Do some kind of creativity. This really hit me on Tuesday, and I was driving in the car. I had to make a quick run over to the bank, and on the way back from the bank, I heard an old song. It was an old Motown song that I like, and it just made me happy. And so I immediately came back, opened up my old iTunes. I haven't bought music on iTunes for a couple years, and I threw some money into my account, and I bought like 30 songs. And I just decided music was going to be something that I can't fix a lot of things that are out there, but when I put my headphones on early in the morning or during my lunch or in the evening, I can at least listen to some music. And that's one of those things that I have done. I also recommend this with your friendships. Don't let your friendships go too buried. Call people, Zoom with people, FaceTime with people, email them, but keep your friendships up during this. And continue to explore new things. You don't have to be good at them. You know, photography is one of those. I have a friend who basically blew the dust off a camera in a closet, and she has started going out and shooting pictures each day. And she freely admitted she's not very good, but she absolutely loves doing it. And it's become a great creative and psychological outlet for her. Find your happy place, and maybe it's doing the art, maybe it's listening to music, maybe it's doing yoga, maybe you can't go to the yoga studio or the gym, but maybe you can still do that at home. Maybe you're going for walks now, maybe you can go to the beach and you're walking by yourself at the beach. In my case, one of the things that I have also done is my dog, he's right behind me over here, I get to bring him to the office because there's nobody here, and he's a pit bull rescue, and I don't really keep him around a lot of people, but he's been an extremely loyal dog to me. And I get to spend a lot more time with him. He's 13. He's not going to be around much longer, and he's really showing his age. But a little bit of collateral beauty for me has been I've gotten to spend a lot of time with him. And if I finish a project in the middle of the day and I feel like going and laying down on the ground over here in the studio next to him, I do it. And it's a little thing, but I recommend to you, see if you can find those little things along the way. The elections 4 years ago, I believe, changed a lot of what's going on in our country right now. And the elections a couple weeks ago, I believe, changed it again. I don't know that we know what's going to happen as a result of this, but I know things aren't going to be the same. And this is something that is unprecedented in my lifetime. So in 60 years, I've never seen anything quite like this. And I think that put a lot of pressure on us. And I think it's been strange. But another factor of that is you guys, for a long time, have been in a bubble of education. We've all been in bubbles of education. I was in a bubble of education. You go to kindergarten, you go to elementary school, you go to middle school, you go to high school, now you're going to college. Some of you may go on to grad school, and you're in this bubble where you don't deal with a lot of what's going on out there because you're dealing with classes and studying and exams and projects. But that's going to end for you guys at some point. Some of you this semester, some of you next semester, some of you maybe in a year. If you go to grad school, it might be 3 years, but it will end. That education bubble will end, and you will be thrust into society somewhere, here, maybe somewhere else. And when I graduated my undergrad degree, I thought the world was going to welcome me with open arms. I thought they were going to say, Brian, you got your degree. Come and work in our world. We'll pay you lots of money. We'll give you credit cards. We'll give you cars, and life will be wonderful. And it wasn't. And it wasn't bad, but there was a whole bunch of other people that graduated when I did, and I had to fight them for jobs. But in a relatively short period of time, it all worked out, and it will work out for you guys. It's a strange time right now with COVID. It's a very strange time, but it won't be strange forever. And even if we stay in a weird state for a while, we're figuring this out. I'm finding students are getting jobs right now. 6 months ago, it was pretty rough. 4 months ago, it started loosening up. And I have students that are getting internships now. They're getting jobs now. So it's going to loosen up. Don't let a little bit of setback worry you guys for a long period of time. So my recommendation on that is start getting ready now. Start thinking about the things that you will do later. You guys are going to start adulting. And if mom and dad haven't necessarily kicked you off the auto insurance or kicked you out of the house yet, that may be coming a little bit down the road. And just know that it is, and know that we've all gone through it, and you'll get through it. But you're going to be working probably. You're going to be probably commuting, at least down the road. For a while, you might be working remotely, but you'll probably be commuting. And you will find no matter how many songs you have on your playlist, you'll probably start listening to the radio, maybe more than you have before, because you'll listen to traffic and you'll listen to news, because that's what we do. You'll probably have to start paying more in the way of taxes, but that's a good sign. The collateral beauty in that is you pay more taxes when you make more money. But we all have to put on our big boy pants and our big girl pants. And we begin to bridge that gap of having been in the educational bubble and becoming the adults that we will be likely for the rest of our life. I usually say that who you are before college and who you are after college are different. And the change happens during college. We begin to think differently. We begin to act differently. And sometimes it's very, very noticeable. And sometimes it's not noticeable. But who we are after that experience really is different. Now, one thing I will tell you is I tried for a long time in my life to control things, to gain control. I just wish I could get control of this situation. And I'm going to tell you that I suggest that you don't try to do that. And the reason is you can rarely control a lot of what's out there. There's a lot of other people that are controlling a lot of other things. So once I hit my 50s, I stopped saying I wanted to try and control things, but I shifted my thinking. And instead of trying to control things, I've tried to seek balance. And so I now look for balance in things. When things are out of my control, I just try to balance it on the other side. When work is really crazy, I try to balance it on my personal life. If I have a client who's being a son of a bitch and I'm just not happy, then I shift some of my efforts to a client that makes me happy when I do their work. This also relates to people. And I believe you have 3 buses in your life: an A bus, a B bus, and a C bus. And you put people in your life on different buses. Well, I'll tell you, the A bus, that's where you put the people that you love, whose relationship you cherish. You put your good friends on that C bus, and those are the people that you would do things for. Those are the people that would call you up and say, I need help, and you'd go help them. They're on your A bus. And then you've got the other people, they're not as good of friends, but they're friends nonetheless. But you kind of find they come and go throughout life. And sometimes when things are rough, they fade away. Those are the B people. They're on your B bus. And the C bus, those are the people that kind of cause trouble or problems. And sometimes it's family, sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's others. But my nickname for the C bus is the see you later bus. You don't have time for those people in your life. And here's the next truth. You don't have a lot of time for your B bus either. A little bit, but not a lot. So my recommendation is, as you leave school and you immerse yourself into things like jobs and careers and maybe marriages and families, you're going to devote time to those people who are on your A bus. And you can try to devote time to the B bus. Just know it's tougher. But there will also be people in your life that are on that C bus, and I will tell you they are not worth spending a lot of time worrying about. And I'm not trying to be cold or harsh on that, but I'm saying it makes the time with the A bus people much better. And we can go for days, weeks, months, even years trying to fix people who are on that C bus, and you're never going to fix them. The people that screwed you over at one point in your life, they'll probably do it again. But the people that help you, they'll probably help you again. So just be mindful of that. And then I'll just kind of close a little bit in few people on their deathbeds talk much about money, how much money they have in the bank, how much money they made over their careers. They don't talk about how big their houses were. And they don't really say, I wish I've got a big house, I've got a 6-bedroom house, but I wish I had an 8. They don't say that when they're on their deathbeds. They usually talk about the people that they loved, and they talk about the good times. And they often talk about the people that they love, and they wish they could have more time with those people. It's usually their family and their close friends. Most people, when they interview people on their deathbeds, most of those people do not regret things that they did. But many of those people regret the things that they didn't do. And it's simply a way of looking at your life when you go forward. My suggestion is, unless it's really a stupid idea, go for it. Try it. Just do it. You can always change your mind later. We've learned in business, that one of the things clients and customers don't like is for companies and brands to do nothing. They want brands to try new things. And you know what? Sometimes those brands fail. Apple has failed. Nike has failed. Mercedes-Benz has failed. But you know what? When the brands are resilient, their customers, they'll let them get by with a couple failures because the successes are so good. People say, I have no regrets. And I believe that's bullshit. I don't believe people can go through life and not have regrets. The trick is have as few regrets as you can, and don't make them big regrets. Just try to minimize them. Carpe diem, seize the day, go for it, try it. If you try something and you fail, Denzel Washington has a great way of saying this. He's got a great video if you ever want to look at it. It's on YouTube. And he says, fail forward. Fail doing something that's going to help you get forward, that's going to teach you a lesson that you won't do the next time. Fail forward. So I suggest go for things, try things. If something inside of you is saying, I think I should try working in New York City, go for it. The time to do that is now, not 50 years from now. Try it now. You want to try a new job? You want to try a new career? Try it. Now, don't do it in a stupid way, but you know what? Try it. You can always change your mind again. If you find yourself failing, fail forward. Fail in a way that's going to help you no matter what. Look for the collateral beauty when things are not going your way. Look for the good. Look for the things that make you happy along the way. You can't make everything better, but you can often make your life a little bit better along the way by doing little things. I will simply close out this last 15-minute lecture by saying it's been a challenging semester for all of us, but I appreciate your guys being here. It's been an honor to have taught this class. I know that sounds corny, but I don't really do this for the money. It's nice to get a check, but I do this because I like doing it. And I feel like I get to absorb a little bit of the energy you guys have. And I think seeing you guys do things and learn things and work on projects and talk about all the exciting things you want to do, a little bit of that rubs off on me. My daughter, who's 20, much like you guys, this hasn't been a great junior year for her. She got accepted to Berkeley, and she's living at home with mom and dad. She really wanted that experience. Well, she and a couple friends, Berkeley actually did this really cool thing for all the junior transfers this year. They put them in pods of 15. And these pods had an orientation that lasted 4 days. And I thought, what the heck could you do in 4 days? Well, the orientation only lasted about an hour. The rest of the time, they just got to know each other. They chatted, they played games online. And my daughter became friends with a girl. She actually lives in Burbank. And we live over in Woodland Hills. And turns out they were taking one class together. So they would compare notes and they'd study together on Zoom or on FaceTime. And then they got together once or twice, socially distant in parks. And then the other friend met up with a couple other girls that were transferring up there. And they decided they all wanted to maybe look at getting an apartment in the spring. And so they all went and got COVID tests. They all tested negative. They self-quarantined until they got the results. They all got the results. They piled in a car, and they went up there with a change of clothes and some masks and a whole bunch of hand sanitizer, and they drove up to Berkeley, and they spent 2 days up there in a hotel room, and then they would go out and look at apartments. And they found an apartment. There was a very nice old lady that owns an apartment right next to campus, and you would never be able to get this apartment. There's waiting lists for a long time, but in COVID, they're available. So they signed a lease, and my daughter's going to move away from home. She's still going to take remote classes in the spring, but she's going to move away with her friends, and they already have a roommate agreement. They're going to get COVID tested every other week, and it's a big change. So it's a big change for her. It's a big change for us not having her. She'll be moving in about 4 weeks, 5 weeks. But I look at that and I say, that's some of the collateral beauty for me, that as much as I don't want her to go, I'm so excited for her. And when they came back from Berkeley that weekend, a couple weekends ago, and we got to meet the other girls, I was so jealous. I was so jealous of them going off to school. And it made me realize that's one of the reasons why I like teaching, because I like seeing what you guys are doing, and I really feed off of that energy. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope I did okay this semester. I'm sure I could have done better. I'm sure I could have done worse. So I tried very hard. And with that, I'm going to say I'm not scheduled to teach in the spring as of right now. But I hope maybe sometime down the road, whether it's at Woodbury or an alumni event or maybe out there in business, that we can meet again. Please know that you can reach me through my Woodbury email. So if you have questions about jobs or interviews or your resumes, please feel free to ask. I'm always there to try and help on that. And so I hope to see you guys in the future on that. And with that, I will say our last lecture is over. We have no new material that we're going to do. And what I'm also going to do is say, I'm going to shift gears into a bit of review. But unlike reviews that I've done in the past, I don't really think we need to go through everything that's on the study guide. I will be happy to answer any questions you guys have, but let's just talk a little bit about the exam itself. What is the exam going to be like? Well, one thing I don't like about Woodbury in the fall semester is if you don't have studio art classes, we have this very strange thing that happens where we're the week ahead of Thanksgiving right now. And we're certainly not having any class next week. So tonight's our last night of class. You guys have already turned in your projects. I'm busy grading them. We're not going to have class next week. And then they have the studio juries the week after. And our final exam isn't until later that week after, which I think is scheduled for December 10th would have been the day. And that's a long time. So I've made a couple decisions. We have to have a final. It's written in how we teach these classes. We have to have a culminating experience. So we will have a final exam, but this is what I'd like to do for it. First of all, I am going to stick extremely closely to the to the final study guide. I just want to make sure I've got the right pages in front of me. I'm gonna open up my digital file on that right now. Sorry, I should have had that open before. My bad. No, I opened up the wrong one. Dopey me. There we go. I got the right one now. So I think it's strange that we have this almost 3 weeks between the last class. We have a holiday in there. Then we have what in essence is a dead week. And then we have a week of finals. So I told myself that I thought the best thing to do is we're going to stick very close to the study guide. So don't expect things that are outside of that. I will also commit to the test being true, false, multiple choice, matching. There will be no essay questions. There is a possibility there will be short answers, and by short answers, I mean 1, 2, or 3 words. That's what I mean by short answer, but I'm gonna try to minimize those. It will be slightly longer than the midterm. The midterm, I think, was 30, 40 questions. It will be no more than 50 If I do 50, each one will be worth 2 points. They won't be worth huge amounts. All combined, it'll be worth 100 points. I think I gave you guys an hour and a half. I'm going to do 2 hours. So my quick calculations on it are, if I do 50 questions, I won't do any more. If I did 50, you'd have a couple minutes for sure to do each one. And even if you don't know anything, circling a true or false, you got a 50-50 shot at getting it right. Now, just like the midterm, open book, open note, open computer, open internet, whatever you want. And there's no bad ethics to this. I'm saying what I want you to do is get the answers right. And even if you learned it while you're taking the test, then you learned it. And I'm happy about that. So there's going to be no tricks. There's going to be no, nothing that is going to be new on the test, like essay questions. My original thought earlier in the semester was I was actually going to have you guys do a little bit of brand creation on the exam. I had an essay question I was going to do. We're not going to do that. So the questions will actually be very similar to the style of questions that you had on the midterm. Now, here's another thing that I would like to do. I haven't received anything from the department that says I can or can't do this. But because we have students living in many different places, we have different internet capabilities with everybody, I am going to create a 48-hour window in which you can take your final exam. Now, I would like to have you guys give me just a little feedback on this. So I'm going to ask a question right now, and I'd like you guys just to answer in the chat, if you will. And so for those 48 hours, I think it's best to do it if our class was scheduled for a Thursday night. My thinking is I would open up the exam on Wednesday morning and let you take it anytime Wednesday morning, afternoon, or night, or anytime Thursday afternoon or night. I could also do it Thursday or Friday, but that's just another day 3 weeks from now. So what I'd like for first of you to answer is, do you think this will work for you with your timing, with your schedule, with your internet? And I'd just like you to simply say yes or no. And if the answer is no, you and I will discuss how we can make it better. And then the second thing is, let me know if you would like, which we already have, I'm already starting to get the answers, Wednesday, Thursday as being the 2 days, or Thursday, Friday of that week. So it would be, where were my notes? The 9th and 10th, or the 10th and 11th. So if you guys could just write a few of those, and we'll see. I haven't seen anybody saying they have any challenges or problems with those yet. Looks like we've got a few people that are open to either one. Anybody else have any thoughts, opinions on this? Working on both for many of you. Okay, so I think, any last comments? Anybody else have any issues that they're not able to make something on those days? Okay, so as of right now, I think the best thing for everybody would be to make it Wednesday, Thursday, and it'll be all day. Now, I may not open it up at, 12:01 a.m., but I'll probably open it up at like 8 a.m. on that Wednesday, and I'll close it at midnight or 11:59 on Thursday night. So if you want to take it during our regular scheduled class time, you can do that, but anytime during that time. You're going to get at least 2 hours to do it. It will be a test on Moodle as it was before. And as I said, everything is going to be open book, open note, open computer, open internet, whatever you need. And it will stay very close to the study guide. So I think that's it for kind of the generic information about the exam. Before we go into any of the actual material that's on there, does anybody have any questions about the mechanics of this? Does that seem pretty straightforward to you guys? Pretty okay? I'm getting one thumbs up and I get no thumbs down, so I'm gonna keep moving forward on that. Um, I will hesitate to say I'm going to make the exam easier, but I'm going to try and make it as fair and as close to what we talked about in class as possible. I'd hate to have a recording that says I'm going to make this test easier for you guys. So on the recording, I'm going to say I'm going to make it as fair as I can for you guys. I still would like you to study for it. My suggestions for the best way to study for this: if you have the textbook, review the chapters in the textbook. If you don't have the textbook, review what I've posted on Moodle, all the publisher's notes that I've put up there. And no matter what, please look at the PowerPoints for each one of the chapters and each of the nights of class that we've put up there, because everything is going to come from that stuff. And if you could only study one thing, I'd start with the PowerPoints. And the PowerPoints support the book, but I'm going to stay really on those big topics. And those are the topics that I have put on the study guide. So if you guys look at if you did download the study guide from Moodle, if you printed it out, what you're going to find is it's basically the same. I actually fixed a few typos. I did not add anything in the first half of the study guide. So it's very much the same as what it was. I did delete a few things, and I probably could delete a few more. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to put on the test. I'm still not quite sure what I'm going to put on the test, but there's nothing different there. And then when we get to sort of the second half of the semester, you're going to see some of the new stuff that was really just in the last month or two that we did. And I think the mark that I have on that is, so on my printout, I have a couple extra pages that you guys don't have. So I can't give you the page number on it, but it's right where the line that says brand extensions is. Let me find where that is. Come on, where is it? Ah, there we go. Yeah, so it has things like some of the trends, the secondary brand associations, 8 things to link a brand to, key factors. It goes there, and then it says brand extension. That was the end of the first, the initial study guide. So the things that you see after that, those are the chapters from the second part of the semester. I believe they start with chapter 9. I think we skipped 10. We went to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I think we may have skipped one more in there. If I skipped it on the notes, and I said I skipped it on the notes, we're skipping it. What we moved into from sort of learning what a brand is and what a brand does, it was some of the ways of managing a brand, building brand equity, and extending a brand through things like brand extensions. We looked at ways of creating value. That's what initially Chapter 9 is about, developing ways of measuring it. We talked about things like marketing audits and brand audits, taking a close look at what you're doing. I'm going to skip around a little bit here because in my mind there's a logic to it that's a little different than the book. But we also looked at some of the things like doing a brand inventory. What does the brand mean? What are some of those? We typically use brand elements in that brand inventory. Is it the logo? Is it the font? Is it the colors? Is it associations that we have? And among those, we also had some tools that we looked at. One of them is kind of a mind map. And if we don't understand everything about a brand, creating a mind map about the brand might help, and put the brand right in the middle and then just start thinking about it. And you basically do little leaves on the tree to reinforce things about the brand. We looked at ways of the brand positioning. This is Robert's model that he used. And he basically said, let's think about what customers believe about our brand, what they value in a product that our brand represents, what the firm says about the brand, and where the firm wants to take the brand. And that really helps us as people managing the brand kind of figuring out how we should position that brand. I also gave you guys a bit of discussion on the concept of a brand Bible, which is something that my company does a lot of with our clients, where we assemble all those brand elements in a notebook. And when we're working on creating a brand, we actually work on that brand Bible. And once that brand is established, we give that brand Bible to the client and we say, live by this, don't change, don't stray. Doesn't mean you won't ever change or stray, but do it with purpose. The example that I think I mentioned in class is when I did some work for Humana Healthcare. We pitched them on doing a custom publication. They said yes. It was about a $3 million job that our company got. And the brand Bible that they gave us was about 3 inches thick. It was over 1,000 pages of how to work on their brand. Now, when my company does one, if we stretch it as far as we can, it might be 20 pages. But mostly what we do is we talk about fonts, we talk about color, we talk about style, we talk about brand value, we talk about brand meaning, and we do about 20 pages. But that's the sort of exercise you need to do when you're managing a brand. You also want to look into the way customers view your brand. And it was suggested that you immerse yourself in quantitative research, actually finding sort of numerical values. Do people buy your product? Do they buy more? Do they value it? Qualitative research being sort of feelings that people have. And another emerging way of monitoring customers as they relate to brands is to see what they say about brands in social media, where they're given a platform where they can talk about it. And we've got a number of different additional tools that came out during that discussion: the Power Grid, perceptual maps. We began to see that there are things like an brand architecture, brand hierarchy. Remember that we spoke of things like Chevrolet, which really is a brand, but it falls under a corporate brand of General Motors. But underneath it are brands of cars, things like a Chevy Corvette. And there could even be a Chevy Corvette ST. And that would be what we would refer to as a brand hierarchy. And then we looked at that thing which was the Ansoff matrix. And this guy Ansoff kind of created that matrix that we went over and that's in the PowerPoint that showed us how, depending on where we are in the life of our brand, we maybe should be doing a market penetration strategy where we're trying to sell more within that market. Or maybe we should actually be looking at creating new products with our brand. Maybe we should be looking at how the market itself is growing. And maybe we should be looking at changing entirely what we do. And so there's lots of examples out there of why you maybe should do these. So when Apple first came out with the iPod, there was really a market development strategy. They had to grow the market so people knew what an iPod was so that they would buy it, and they were very successful with that. They then did some product development. They came out with new iPods with new features and benefits to them. And that was product development strategy. So they originally developed the market, then they developed products. And then with that stronghold, they then just plowed through the market, and every other MP3 player tried to really find the chink in their armor, and they didn't find it. And then ultimately, they diversified, and the iPod was moved into the iTouch. And the iTouch was not around long. Basically, an iTouch was an iPhone without the phone. And then effectively what we did is we all but abandoned the iPod because every iPhone came with an iPod in it. and the product changed, it diversified. So there are aspects to creating brands. Some of the things that we looked at are specific to brand extensions. We talked about vertical extensions and horizontal extensions. Vertical meaning maybe we add to our brand above our brand or below our brand. Car manufacturers do this, camera companies do this, phones might do this where you have a higher level and a lower level. You can also have horizontal extensions. I was in 7-Eleven yesterday and I was floored at the number of different Cheetos that were out there. Those aren't vertical. They don't have one Cheeto that costs more than others, but they have hot Cheetos and flaming hot Cheetos and white cheddar Cheetos and puffed Cheetos. And they've extended that brand horizontally with just many, many more possibilities for it. And remember that we want to build extensions that will continue to build brand equity. That's really the goal. All semester long, we've talked about building brand equity. And if we do it properly, we're going to continue to build brand equity. But if the extension has nothing to do with the product, we run the risk of losing brand equity along the way. We also had some interesting concepts. We didn't really talk about them too long, but things like retro branding. I think the example that I talked about in class was Old Spice, and how I just chuckled when that first commercial came out. And I thought, oh my gosh, Old Spice, that was an old brand when I was a kid. And they're bringing it back, but they actually brought it back in a way that made fun of it. And we found that's actually kind of cool. And if you think of some of the cars that are out now, things like a Dodge Charger or Challenger, we're actually bringing back some old models. We've revived, we've been breathing new life into Mustangs again. And so we're sort of bringing these retro brands back. But also know that over time, brands can die. And sometimes we're better off retiring a brand because maybe there's something that we can do in the future. So we might do things such as retiring a brand, or even the term obsoleting a brand. Sometimes the market obsoletes it for us. Now, something I didn't mention above, but I wanted to make sure to mention, remember that the brand is as much what we say it is and try to make it and put into it as it is what customers think about our brand. Customers have a lot of say in our brand. They didn't have a say in it. Hang on just a second. Sorry, I just heard a very strange noise in our office and my wife has already left, so I wanted to make sure that somebody hadn't walked in the front door. Sorry about that. But just know that the customer is so vitally important. Not only do we want to satisfy them, we need to know what they think. We need to know how they feel. We need to try and align what we say with a brand with them. And that part of that goes back to that Roberts model of making sure we understand what they value. Because when we find they don't value what we're doing, then we probably need to retire brands or obsolete brands or change brands or diversify brands. We spoke a little bit about some of the geographical factors. What are we really talking about there mostly? Well, we identified 4 of those. That brands can be regional. I gave you guys the example, I think, of Carl's and Hardee's. For a long time in the country, we also had Ralph's and Kroger stores. In certain parts of the country, it was one name, and in certain parts of the country, it was another name, but it was basically the same products. We might have demographic or cultural segmenting. We might sell the exact same product to 2 different people, sort of under slightly different branding. Remember that we can have brands that move beyond our own country borders, and we would call those multinational brands. And nowadays, we also have truly global brands. So for example, my bicycle client sells in about 40 countries. We would call them multinational, but they don't sell in however many countries in the world, 100 and something countries. We don't sell everywhere. So technically we are not global because we're not everywhere, but we're multinational because we sell in many different countries. And then we looked at a few ways that we can do branding internationally. We can export brands, meaning we take the brand that we have here in the US and we basically use that same branding where we go. A lot of big companies do that when they have a lot of power. I think one of the examples that I mentioned was Starbucks and how they got into the Japanese market, and they were very concerned that maybe it wouldn't work, and that Japan was much more of a tea society. And even though Starbucks sells tea, they're really known as coffee. But of course, when they launched the brand, they found that the brand had already gotten there. That so many Japanese, when they had traveled, they had gotten Starbucks when they were in the US or in Europe, that it actually was quite easy. And people in Japan wanted the Starbucks brand. And so we would refer to that as exporting a brand. But also, we might rebrand internationally. We might change the brand entirely. Sometimes a company, through legal reasons or through working out distributions with local distributors, we might actually rebrand the exact same product with different names, different packaging, different logos. I think I used as the example on that. We've seen that in some countries where cultural norms change. China was one of those, where certain products, just because of a name or packaging, don't work. We also, we chuckle, it was quite a while ago, but Chevy, of course, had a very popular car in the 60s and 70s that was named after a star, and it was called the Chevy Nova. But those of us that speak Spanish know that Nova is actually not a good term for a car. And so if you happen to say it that way, you were talking about the car that doesn't go. And so that car needed to get rebranded when it went internationally. So we have exporting brands and we actually can rebrand things, but we have a hybrid that's in there. And I actually think this is the way most companies are looking at international branding right now. And we call that glocalization or glocalizing. And that's a mashing of the words global and local together for glocal. That's where that comes from. And I gave you guys examples. I think in the PowerPoint, the one that kind of clicks with me is McDonald's, that they still use the term Mick, but they had like Mick Curry, you know, when they sell McDonald's in India. And they had, I think there was some other kind of, you know, Mick Fish or something that was in a island country. So they still use some of their branding, but they changed the products and they changed the packaging. And we would call that glocalizing, when you kind of adopt some of your brand, but you adopt some of the cultural norms of the place where you're marketing it. And we sort of ended that discussion by saying, everybody thinks that, you know, just because we can sell things globally, it's always better. Well, it's not. Sometimes it is, but it also can be very expensive. And that actually was a reason we mentioned that regional branding often happens, that we may not be able to afford all the raw materials and the factory time to build a brand nationally or globally, but we can't afford to do it regionally. And that's how regional brands often happen. But there are advantages to it when you have those resources, is that you can see your sales rise dramatically. I can tell you that over the last 40 years, we have seen the market of China grow in a huge way for American manufacturers. China had a very large hunger for American products, and a lot of companies poured money into getting into the China market. And a lot of those companies have been very successful in doing that. So that's kind of a quick overview of what we've talked about since the midterm. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it up, and if you guys have specific questions, I'm going to do my best to answer them. If we don't have a lot of questions, we're not going to have much longer of a class. Do know that while tomorrow's a little bit challenging, I am, as of right now, not traveling at all between now and the finals time. I actually may travel I have one possible trip out to the desert between now and the end of the year. I don't think it's going to happen in the next week or two. By that, what I mean is I'm going to be around, so you guys can reach out and ask me questions. If you want to take time to go over the study guide, see if there are things that you don't know or don't understand, I can give you references to the textbook. If you haven't downloaded the presentations, the PowerPoints, you can do that. Or you can just ask me specific questions about it. Just know that we've got a little bit of time, a couple weeks on that. But if anybody has any questions right now, I'm happy to try to answer those. It's actually been a very long week for me and a very long day, but I'll do my best. I had one rock star to give me a little bit of energy tonight that should, and I'm really embarrassed to do this, but look at how bad I am. I did have one from last night. I could have lied and said I had two tonight, so I was really up. But I had one last night because I had a night meeting, and then I had one tonight. Does anybody have any questions, either specifics about the mechanics of taking the test, the time, or what the format's going to be, or on material from the second half of the semester? I'm going to do my best not to test a lot of minutia, a lot of really, really, really small things. I'm going to stick more to concepts as much as I can. And remember, I'm only going to add a little bit to the test just to kind of make it representative of a culminating final experience and test. Any questions that have come up?
Hey, Professor.
Yeah.
Thanks for the lecture. I think it was really good, especially the beginning. I thought that was pretty cool and some helpful, I guess you would call it, helpful tips for life. I
Thank
think
you.
that was really good. Thank you.
Well,
I appreciate it.
I've got a few years on you guys, and I don't always want to just sound like, you know, the old fart who's, you know, telling you guys do this and don't do this. But I don't have big regrets in my life, but I have a lot of mistakes that I've made. And if I've been able to learn from them and maybe help you guys not make the same mistakes, then so be it. What that comes from is when I used to teach the very last class in Pepperdine Marketing Communications, the capstone class. The person before me never spoke of any of that. They didn't talk of resumes. They didn't talk of jobs. They just had a final, really tough class. And when I took it over, I thought, no, the best thing we can do is sort of prep students for going out. And when I talked to students I had had before, they told me all the things that they weren't prepared for or didn't think. And so I sort of crafted this. There's a famous professor, I think he went to Harvard, and he was diagnosed with cancer, so he knew he wasn't going to be around for long. And he did what he called the last lecture. And he did a lecture, a very long lecture, but similar to that, where he sort of spoke from the heart. And it actually became a book. And I was very moved by an instructor who was dying of cancer, who still felt it was important to impart knowledge that way. And so this is just a very pared down. This isn't the 50-minute version. This is the 15-minute version. But I really do feel, and there's a, you know, if there's one little piece of that I do think is so important, is I've known so many students, and I myself was one, that I actually had, I'd even call it a brief bout of depression. When I graduated, the year ahead of me, the economy was booming, but my senior year, we slid into a recession. Not a horrible one, but not a great one. And everybody I knew who was a year ahead of me, they had jobs and they got job offers and they got, you know, car allowances and they got travel and entertainment budgets. We couldn't even get jobs when I was out. So for like 2 or 3 months, I was unemployed. And I sent out 80 resumes. Back then, we literally put them in envelopes and sent them to companies. And I got one response, which was a rejection. 1 out of 80, and that was a rejection. And it was a real low point in my life, but I had one person that I had helped get, so I had worked in television while I was in college because I was a film major, and I had helped one guy get a job, get his first job, but he was a year older than me and he graduated 6 months ahead of me. And when I moved back to LA and I didn't find work, somehow he found me And he said, you know, you helped me get a job 2 years ago in San Diego. I'm working for a company and we need one guy to come work one day. You want to come work on a television show for one day? And I said, yes. And I made $35 that day. Parking in the building was $19 because it was up on Sunset Boulevard. So I netted $16. I think lunch back then was probably $5 or $6. So I didn't make much, but I had a job. And at the end of the day, the production manager said, can you come back tomorrow? And I said, yes. And one day became two, two became three, three became a week, 1 week became 4, and that month became 3 months, all the way through the end of that production. And so it showed me that the world came around. The world gave me some lemons, but fortunately I was able to get a little lemonade out of it. So if I could say that there was anything from that that I would like you guys to get away with or take away with is the world may not be super kind when you graduate, but you guys are smart. And what you've learned in school, you may not apply in your first jobs, but a lot of what you've learned, you will apply years down the road. So be confident when you go out there. Don't be cocky, but be confident. You've learned a lot of good stuff, and you guys will make great contributions to companies, and those might even be your own companies. So I'm glad you got something out of it.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. I think, I don't know if me being like a veteran, but you know, after getting out of the service, I did kind of go through that period similar to what you're describing, where
Yeah.
it's very tough to like kind of go back into like the civilian world, what they call it.
Yeah.
And, you know, just kind of sticking through things, you know, eventually things start to like kind of open up and you start to kind of seeing, okay, this is the path. I'm kind of on the right path now. So
Yeah.
that was good. I really appreciate those words. And I guess the last question I have is if you're able to give, since we have like 3 weeks before the final, if you do give feedback on our brand project,
Yeah.
would we be able to, I don't know, implement changes and like submit or something, or is it just kind of? I mean, it's just a question.
I'm going to say something. It might be a little premature for me to say this, but I don't think you're going to need to.
Okay.
If I encounter any problems, which I haven't yet, I'll let you know. But I don't think that's going to be necessary. I've seen some really good work so far. So I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed that everything I see is going to be of that level. It's been pretty good so far. So I'd hate for somebody to have to do more. And if this stuff is good or really good, as I've seen, then I don't want to give you guys extra work.
All right.
Like I said, I can guarantee nobody's failing. Any other questions along the way on anything while you guys still have me? Anything come up? I don't even have to tell you, you know, bring number 2 pencils. You're going to be doing everything online. I don't have to tell you to bring calculators. You'll have them on your computers or on your phones if you need them. I don't think you're going to need calculators for anything. Know the basic concepts. I will give you, I'll give you one more thing. So I usually review the study guide as I am creating the final. And I'm probably going to take one more whack at the study guide this weekend. And if I delete any things off of the study guide, I'll post an amended study guide. Any study guides that I do, don't expect anything new on it, but if I can drop some things because I know they won't be on the test, I'll drop them for you. Fair enough? Anybody else? Anybody need anything? Anybody have any other questions? I'm trying to think what else I could help you on. I'm not good at working on cars anymore. I'm not really good at working on computers anymore. I know a little bit about cameras. If anybody's shopping for cameras these days, I might be able to help you with that. I actually know a fair amount about bourbon. I'm the president of the Woodland Hills Bourbon Society, so I could help you with that.
I think, I don't know if you've seen my brand project, but you might find it interesting because it's fun to drink. So I changed it from the whole first concept that
From the,
I turned
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, so I made mine. It's a rum. So maybe, yeah. I like rum, so I'm a rum guy myself. So it's different.
I actually started liking rum 2 years out of college. I worked at Gray Advertise when I got my first real job, like with a salary. It was very low. I think it was $1,000 a month. But a year into it, I earned my first. After our first year, you got a week vacation, and it was a use it or lose it. So I chose to take it, and I for $499, I flew to Jamaica for a week and went to the Reggae Sunsplash Festival. And I went to the Appleton Rum Factory up in the mountains. And we sampled 191 proof rum, which is the
It's almost
base.
100%.
Almost. So basically what they do is they make rum that's almost pure alcohol, and then they cut it. And they cut it with other parts that have more flavor. And that's where you get, a silver rum or a dark rum. And I went from not liking rum to liking it a lot on that trip right there. And I actually still have a bottle from 1982. I have an old bottle of rum. And I actually opened it with a couple friends. And I learned that rum doesn't last that long. It was not very good at all, but I've kept the bottle.
What's I guess this will be my last question, but what's the bourbon you recommend? Like if you had to try one bourbon, what like
Oh,
a sipper.
gosh, that's difficult. Let me answer it this way. My group that does tastings, what we've determined is below $20, there are not a lot of really good ones. A few, hard to find. Above $20, they start to get pretty good very quickly. So there's a group of distillers in Kentucky that was known for a while as the Kentucky Bourbon Circle, and it included Knob Creek, Booker's, Baker's. I think those were the main four. Those are all very good. I think Knob Creek is a safe one. That's one that I often recommend to people. Some of my friends don't like Maker's Mark. I like Maker's Mark a lot. So that's another one. Maker's Mark is the one that has the red wax on the top. And I think it's a very good one for people to try. It's a little sweeter, so it's particularly good in the holidays. And remember, bourbon is made from at least 51% corn mash, which is sweeter. So Scotch, which is also whiskey. So whiskey is the brand, if you will, for all of them. But you have two main offshoots: Scotch, what we call Scotch, and bourbon. And Scotch is made from grains like barley, and so it's much more bitter. But if you go to England, they don't even know what bourbon is. They only have Scotch. And over here, we have bourbon. And I think I've told you guys, I've even learned, I could even weave this into an economics class. One of the reasons that bourbon has become so popular here is back when before the country was really even the country, and people were farming in Kentucky, corn was one of the crops that they found. The Native Americans had been growing corn. Then the settlers that came to the country grew corn. But corn doesn't last a long time. Corn can go bad. But they found if they mashed it up, mixed in some yeast with some warm water, and then they distilled that, you would get what we now call bourbon. And that bourbon lasts for many years in a bottle. So if they had leftover corn, instead of letting it go bad, they made whiskey that they could eventually sell. And so the birth of bourbon really owes itself to storing. And so it was an economic function of it. But pretty much anything, I'll also just give you one. So if you want a good, inexpensive one, Trader Joe's brand. And the reason is it comes from a a distillery in Kentucky called Buffalo Trace, which is another very good brand. That's usually in the $20 range. The Trader Joe's will be more like the teens, 18, 19. And it comes right from Buffalo Trace. So it's the same thing, but with a different label on it. My group's favorite is called Jefferson. And Jefferson makes Jefferson, Jefferson Reserve, and Jefferson Presidential. And you go from about 28 bucks to 45 bucks to 80 bucks. And the jump from 25 to 45 is noticeable, but the jump from 45 to 85 is not very noticeable. So you're paying twice as much with almost no improvement. So we think that the $45 one is the best tasting, best value combined. And it doesn't mean it's the best of any bourbon ever, but it's the best combination. And we always slip it in at our tastings to use as our benchmark. Like if you can beat that, that's a really good bourbon. Any other questions? I don't know a lot about vodka or gin, so sorry you guys if you have questions about that, but any other questions? It sounds like no, so tell you what, I'm going to say with that, our official class time is over. I wish you guys, I hope you all have a great and a safe Thanksgiving. Please be careful out there. I'm hoping you can see family and friends. If you do, you know, take care of grandma and grandpa that are more susceptible than you guys are. But I hope you guys can have good holidays, safe holidays. I'm around, so please feel free to ask me questions. I'm here to help. And my job is not over until I've graded the last paper, graded the last final exam. So I'm available for questions, and I'm even available afterwards. I'll do my best to help you guys if you have job interviews, internships. I'm actually starting to have people, I had somebody the other day say, hey, we might be looking to bring on a marketing person in the near future. We're going to kind of wait to get through the holidays, but in January. So I'm starting to hear about jobs again. And when I do, sorry, I'll mention one last thing. I should have mentioned this before. My wife and I both have a group on LinkedIn that is called Hemsworth Alumni. And anybody who has ever been in either of our classes, all you have to do is find Hemsworth Alumni on LinkedIn and request to join, and we'll have you join. And we share job information there. So I've gotten people jobs in California and Texas and New York and Chicago just by people saying, I'm moving to Texas. Do you know anybody there? And I put the call out. We've got more than 100 former students in that group. So please feel free if you guys want to join that. I'm happy to have anybody in that group. And with that, I'm going to say it's been a fun semester. It's been a strange one. But be good, you guys. Be safe. And I'll talk to you all later.
All right. Bye, Professor. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Professor Hemsworth, I have a quick question for you about the co-branding and brand extension assignment that I sent you.
Yeah.
Did you receive it?
I believe I received it, but I haven't graded those yet.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I should have, I think I'm going to have everything done hopefully by this weekend. So, you know, take a look on Moodle maybe early next week. And if you don't see it, just shoot me an email.
I will do. Thank you.
Okay. I remember seeing stuff come in, so I think that's what it was.
It's the one I emailed you.
Yeah, to the email, right? So yeah. I know I got that in, but if for any reason, I've gotten so many emails from Woodbury in the last 3 weeks, it's driving me crazy. But if for any reason I misplaced it or can't find, I'll let you know. You'll be okay with it. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Be safe. Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you. I'll email you if I have any other questions about the study guide.
Okay. Sounds good.
Bye.
Yeah, Professor Brian. I just wanted to say, I haven't submitted the brand project.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be submitting the brand project probably by later tonight or tomorrow morning. Is that fine?
There is no chance I will look at it until Saturday, so it doesn't matter between now and then. I've got so much else that I'm doing just at the office that Saturday is going to be my day to do a bunch of grading. So take your time until Saturday.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
And also the Facebook page. I haven't done all of it yet. Can I still do it?
No, you don't need to. I chopped that off a few weeks ago and said, don't do anymore.
All right, perfect.
So you're good.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
All right.
All right, Dr. Brian. And honestly, you'll be missed. Like,
Oh,
for real.
that's nice to hear.
Because,
well,
yeah, because I think this is gonna be the last class. I mean, like, this is gonna be our last meeting. I'm graduating this semester.
Yeah.
And you won't teach actually next semester.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What are you going to do after you graduate?
I have a couple of plans. Like I'm going back home.
Yeah.
And I have like a couple of plans. As soon as I go back there, I'll start.
And where is home?
Saudi.
So we have. I don't have. I've had a fair amount of students, but my wife has had many more Saudi students, and she's got, I don't know, 4 or 5 who are now really good friends with her on Facebook, and I forgot his last name, but Mo, who interned for us as a designer, and she didn't see him for a while, and then just yesterday she was telling me she saw him, and he was always into sports cars, and he posted a picture of him in an SUV, and so my wife said, "What the heck are you doing in SUV?" Well, it turns out he got married, and I guess they're going to be starting a family. So his wife convinced him, "You can't drive sports cars anymore. You got to drive an SUV for the family." And but he's back there now, and he's doing graphic design. Gosh, I'm forgetting all the last names, but Ibrahim is another one who was a intern of ours, and he's working at some Saudi design firm, and he's doing phenomenal work. So we're getting to see a number of our students who have gone back, and getting to kind of have fun seeing what they're up to and what they're doing. So
yeah, honestly, I would love to stay here, but in Saudi right now, you can say like there is more opportunities.
Yeah,
for us, there's a lot of opportunities for us. Yeah, like
it's also kind of a pain here. I don't think our country does a good job of inviting students to stay here. We actually make it difficult with the visas and stuff. So,
yeah.
It's something if you, a little bit of experience there may help you get back if you feel like it. And, know that your advantage increases in time. Your knowledge of 2 different countries, of cultures and language is really something that people value here. So it's not always valued as much right when you graduate, but 5 years from now, you might be able to just write your ticket to come back and work here for a country that does a lot of international work. So.
Yeah, that's probably right. And yeah, if I considered coming back here, I'll hit you up in LinkedIn.
Yeah, and you know what? If you have the time, once you graduate and you move back, shoot me a line. Let me know what you're up to.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
All right. Take care. Have a good Thanksgiving. Call me with any questions you have, and we'll have a final in a couple weeks, and we'll be done.
Of course. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
We'll
Brian.
see you.
Bye.
Hi, Professor. Let me turn my camera on. So I don't know if you saw my brand project yet, or if you read it.
I haven't read your brand project yet.
Okay, so I just want to let you know that the product I chose is an actual product that Isabel and I are working on.
Oh, cool.
Yes,
Is this one
so-
for that you're selling through the family business?
Yes, so this is going to be like an extension, I would say. Like it's a beauty line.
Oh, I did see that. That's what. Yeah. I did see that. That's what it was, but I didn't realize it was real.
Yes, so we've been working on it for the past year, and next semester I'm taking the semester off, and her and I are thinking of going to Syria to actually go and
Wait, you and who are going?
Isabel and I.
Oh, really? Oh, the
Yeah.
sisters are going to go.
Yes.
Have you guys traveled together by yourselves before?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We do it all the time.
I would think that would be really fun.
Yeah. So
I have a feeling you guys have a lot of fun when you travel.
oh my god. So we're thinking of going down there and like looking at the bottling and the packaging and the rose itself, because we want to ensure that we're providing the best quality.
Mm-hmm.
So I just ask you one favor, please.
Sure. What do you need? What do you
Since
need?
we value your feedback and we trust it, after you read my project, maybe we can schedule like a Zoom meeting with Isabel.
Sure.
And you can give us
Sure.
your feedback and let us know if there's anything that needs to be changed or added.
Sure. And not only will I do that, but you know, my wife wrote up notes about the brand before with that care package that you gave,
Oh,
so we can give you even some on that as well. I'd
Okay,
be happy to. I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So you know, whether you want to do it, you know, I'm trying to have everything graded by this weekend. No promises, but you know, if you want to, next week's probably not a good week for it, but we could do it before the final. But if you also want to do it, you know, afterwards,
Yeah,
that's
take your
fine
time.
too.
Yeah,
You know,
anytime.
when are you? You're not traveling probably till spring to go there.
Yeah, we're thinking in March.
In March, okay.
Yes.
So yeah, yeah, I'd be happy to. Oh, it'll be fun. Yeah, now I kind of can't wait to read it.
Thank you.
I had my class in Texas, which is 50 students, and that class, they gave me everything to do in the class, and the final project that they have to do, I before I accepted the teaching position, I didn't know I had to do it. And if I had known I had to do it, I probably wouldn't have said yes to teaching, because I'm working twice as hard there, and
Oh,
it's all been the last like 2 weeks, and we've been very busy at the office the last 2 weeks, so it's been just a challenging time to try and stay up with everything. But
yeah,
my
I'm
goal
sure.
is, I'm actually kind of glad that we have Thanksgiving next week, because it gives me a little time to catch
Yeah.
up. But yeah, no, I look forward to that. Well, that'll be good. Are you guys? Are you doing anything special for Thanksgiving?
Just home with the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have big family here, or not big, or?
Not really. It's just my siblings, my parents, and my uncles.
Uh-huh.
All my family's in Syria, so we want to visit them.
Did I ever tell you about the Syrian family that I had I helped a little bit here through my church? Did I ever mention that to you?
No.
So you know, when we began getting, you know, when all hell broke loose, whatever that was now, 5-7 years ago, and you know, and it was just so bad,
The Civil War?
the Civil War,
Yes.
and we didn't, you know, we in the U.S., I've never really known or understood how much we helped or how much we hurt the cause. But through a church that I go to, which is, when I started going, it was in Pasadena, then it went to Glendale, now it's in Hollywood. But I got involved in it with a book club, and it was a bunch of people, mostly people in Hollywood, like entertainment industry people. But I became very good friends with a number of them, about 10 or 15 of us. And we hadn't done it in a year, but with COVID, we started doing Zoom gatherings. We call it book club, but we don't really read books anymore. We just have discussion topics. And one of the women that was in the group, she was the CEO of the LA Marathon for a while, but now they moved her up, and now she's part of the Frank McCourt's company that owns some pro sports teams and other stuff. She's a very nice lady, very bright lady, and she's very, very giving of her time. And she had mentioned that our church had very quietly adopted a family coming to the US. And it turns out we had adopted 4 families, but this was the second family coming in. But what was interesting about it is they kept it quiet They didn't even tell people in the church. They reached out to a few individuals and they assembled a team of about 10 or 15 people for each family. And it came through Catholic Charities. And Catholic Charities did the sponsorship, but what they did is they reached out to all sorts of different kind of churches around the country, and they placed hundreds, if not thousands, of families here.
Wow.
And so when I heard, her name was Tracy, when I heard that Tracy was on one of those teams and I found out what the teams were doing, you know, the word kind of got around. I had emailed Tracy and I said, listen, I don't know if there's anything I can do, but if I can, just ask. And so a few weeks later, she told me that the family had come into the country and they got them an apartment in the San Fernando Valley, and they got them a year's free rent. And she said, you know, the hard part is it's a husband and a wife and 5 children.
Oh my God.
And they ranged from kindergarten to maybe like 9th grade.
Wow.
5 kids. And she said what they were trying to do is find a job for the husband. And they said, listen, he doesn't speak English. And he was like a martial arts instructor. And they said, we're not really sure that we can find him that work. So we're just trying to find him anything so he can feel like he's doing something. And so I said, let me think about that. And Taryn is a girl who works for me here, and she's involved in a giant social media group, women's group that's like 15,000 women on Facebook in a big group. And I told her about this, and she said, you know what, let me put a call out to my group and see if anybody, you know, knows of anything. And in one day, we got about 4 people who emailed back and said, I have a job. The problem is going to be where they live and where they go for the job. And we couldn't tell people where they lived.
Mhm.
We could just tell them if they were close or not. Like when somebody was Orange County and like, they're not going to be able to commute for a minimum wage job from the Valley down to,
Yeah.
so we had to say, thank you so much, but that doesn't work. But we had somebody who owned a nail salon and a hair salon over in Chatsworth. And the girl was from Syria and her family was from Syria. And she said, I will employ him no matter what. I can't pay a lot, but he can work here and we'll speak the same language. We'll help him learn English and we'll give him a job. And so then the next thing was we had to figure out how to get him there. And so when I mentioned to Tracy, I said, I think we got a job. And she was like, you know, it's only like 5 miles away, but if a bus doesn't go right there, you know, he can't drive.
Yeah.
And or he doesn't have a license anyway, and doesn't have a car. And so I looked it up, and I'm not good with buses at all. I'm born and raised in LA. When you're born here, you don't do buses.
Yeah.
You save every penny you have for a car when you're 16. But I looked it up, and it turns out we could take a bus from Sepulveda down Sherman Way, and then all he'd have to do is walk 2 blocks a little ways down, and he'd be able to get there. So I called Tracy up, and I said, he can do it. Well, I mentioned this to my bike client, and my bike client said, we'll give him a bike. So he can ride from his apartment to the bus stop, and then he can take the bike on the bus, and then when he gets off, he can ride there. So it'll be really easy, really fast. So I got him a bike. My client delivered it to my office, and I called Tracy, and she said, I'll come by and pick it up. Well, she couldn't make it when she was going to come by. She said, I'm so sorry, I can't make it. I got tied up at work. And I said, I know it's very secret and everything where the families are. You're protecting everybody. That's totally okay. But can I deliver it to you where you live in Los Feliz? And she goes, yeah, but then I wouldn't know how to take it over to them in wherever it was, Van Nuys, or I don't even quite know what that is, maybe Panorama City. And she goes, it's totally okay. Was there any chance you could deliver it over there?
Mhm.
And I said, sure. So we arranged for a Saturday when a few people from the church were going to go over there and they were just going to hang with the family. And so I said, I'll just bring it over. And So I went over, and let's say it was 12 o'clock that I was supposed to be there. I got there at 12 o'clock, and I met her outside, and we went up to meet the family. And of course, they don't speak English. And I certainly don't speak much other than English, a little bit of Spanish, but certainly nothing else. And it was very interesting. When I got there, his wife didn't have her head covering on, so they just asked me to stay outside. And I said, "Listen, I can stay outside the whole time."
Oh, are they not Catholic?
No, they weren't.
Oh,
No.
Wow.
So it just came through the Catholic Charities.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just something they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was, and they went to synagogues, and they went to churches, and Protestant and Methodist. So it really was, it was this great thing that nobody heard of, because it was all kept very quiet, because there was a lot of people that didn't want it to happen. But we did it all through the State Department, so everybody got visas and everything. It wasn't like we snuck them in.
Yeah.
So in any event, I was sitting there. 2 people from the church were there, one of whom spoke the language, so they were kind of our interpreter. And the husband was there, and he was kind of out there because I was, but you could tell he was very uncomfortable around the women from the church.
Mhm.
And it just wasn't his scene. It was, and so my friend Tracy said, this is the problem that we have, is that in his culture, he spent a lot of time with the guys, but it was not common that he would spend time with his wife's friends in the house. And so, like a smartass, I said, "Could I take him out for a cup of coffee? Like, is that okay?" And they were like, "Yeah, I think so." And so they asked, and he, like, as soon as they said it, he was like, "Yes, I got a thumbs up real quick." And I said, "Well, tell you what I'll do is we'll get in my car, and I will drive him where the buses go
Mhm.
to where he will work." And so we drove there, and of course, language was a big barrier, but he would look up like 1 or 2 words on his phone, and I'd look up 1 or 2 words, and we kind of hacked our way through. And then we got to where the job was. And so, and I explained to him in very bad, broken language, kind of how the buses work here and where they stop. But we got to the place, and there was a Starbucks right by it.
Mhm.
And I said, "Do you want a cup of coffee?" International sign language for, "Do you want something to drink?" And he goes, "Yeah." So we went over there, and then he asked me if it was okay to smoke, and I said, "Sure, not a problem." So I bought him a coffee, and we sat outside, and he got his phone out, and it brought me to tears. He brought his phone out, and he pulled up a picture, and he showed it to me, and it was a picture of him and his wife and his 5 kids with life vests on in the raft that they took over to, what would it have been? Turkey.
Yeah.
So they, and we figured out, neither one of us was good with Google Translate, but we kind of figured it out over coffee. And what I learned was he and his family walked for about 1.5 years. And then they stayed half a year at a camp. Then they went, I think it was Syria. So would it have been Syria, Turkey, Greece? And then when they got to Greece, they were in a refugee camp for 2 years. But it was during that time that the Catholic Charities was reaching out through our State Department saying, "We'll take them in, we'll sponsor them, we'll pay for it all." And to look at that picture on his phone of his family in that boat, and it was a boat that, it was a smaller boat than any classroom at Woodbury. And I was so moved by that. And so I got him the bike, and he got the job, and he actually didn't last too long in that job, but he got another job. And I was just really happy that I could help a bit. And through, I don't even know how this happened. I can't remember. I think it was through Tracy. it turns out he got on Facebook. And so he and I are friends on Facebook.
What?
And even though we don't even use the same language on Facebook, he tells me happy birthday.
Oh.
And I tell him happy birthday. I mean, so it's a very strange thing, but that's that, you know, for a kid from LA like me who has never had any experience, you know, really with anybody from Syria that I know about, and then to have kind of fallen into this and then being very humbled by it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
actually was, it was just it was great. And I had said to him, boy, I hope in time that things get better, because I would love to go there.
It's beautiful.
And what he said was, he hope it gets better in time so he can go home.
Yeah.
And he still has family there. I think if I interpreted it well, his father there has since died since they've been here. And that's the thing that weighs heaviest on him. But I found out one of the kids had a little bit of difficulty here, but the younger ones all did really well. And I'm going to say, I think the youngest ones are probably entering high school now. And the oldest ones, I think, are off to college. But I remember I was able to, through the church, I was able to hear little updates for about a year, maybe 2 years, how the kids were doing. And the youngest that spoke no English were the first ones to learn English.
Yeah.
They were the first ones. And so they went to, you know, whatever, first grade, second grade, and they picked it up in months, very quickly. And English is not an easy language. The high school kids, it was a little tougher because they were already a little bit set in their ways, but they came around. It just took a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And so that's my only real connection to Syria.
Wow. It's a very beautiful story.
But,
Thank you for sharing.
You know, it was very cool. So, well, listen, you have yourself a great holiday, and definitely we'll plan, and we'll do a Zoom meeting.
Okay.
And it'll be good to see your sister again, and I'll have my wife come on so you guys can meet her.
Okay, perfect.
And hear her, you know, give her 2 cents worth, because what I say only matters this much. What she says matters this much. But we're happy to help. Happy to help.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I have one question regarding your story. Is your church still doing that?
You know, I don't know. They went kind of virtual. Even they were doing. They were beginning to expand. They planted a church up in. It's called Mosaic, and it's a big church. And I won't bore you with the details of it, but the pastor is a guy named Erwin McManus, and I started going there because I read a book he wrote, and I was fascinated by it. And he's written a lot of books, and then through he's almost like a rock star in that community. And one of the people who I'm in the book club with is good friends with his family, so I've gotten to meet him, and he's a very, very nice guy. But then they started a church in Mexico, one in Brazil. And then they have a music group that has recorded several albums. His daughter is the lead singer in that, and it's gotten pretty big. So, and I've gotten lazy, so I don't drive down there to Hollywood like I used to every week.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what was so fun, and not even like my wife and daughter have gone with me, but they don't like going as much. But it's on Sundays, they would typically have a 10 o'clock service. They don't even call it a service, they call it a gathering. 10 o'clock gathering, a noon gathering, and then they'd have like a 4 o'clock gathering and an 8 p.m. on Sunday nights. It was like a nightclub. It's not a church. They're in a big building that they've gutted out, and it's, you know, rock and roll music, and they do crazy big productions of stuff. They also do really interesting. I was attracted to it because I actually always hated churches, and a friend of mine, when he heard I had read this book, he said, "You've got to come, because that's the church I go to." So, for example, one time, I don't think it was Easter, but it was something like that. Let's just say it was Easter. And I convinced my daughter to come with me, and she was maybe 15 at the time. And so my wife was with me, and my daughter's with me, and we parked about a block away because it's, you know, their parking lot fills up real early. And we were there for, I think, the 10 o'clock. And as we were walking up, they had a lemonade stand just right on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and La Brea is where they are. You know, big, busy area. And the pastors always said, I don't want to be where, you know, wealthy people are, not because he has any problem with the wealthy people. He said, but they don't need as much help as the people that don't have money. I want to be where I can help people. So that's why he put it right in Hollywood. And most of the people that go there are out of work actors, right? When they pass the hat, they don't put a lot of money in it. So, but that's what he said. So I'm just going to give you two real quick ones, and then sorry for taking so long. But so they had this lemonade stand, and it said lemonade 5 cents. So I reach in my pocket, and I've got a nickel, and I say, go get yourself a lemonade. And I give her a nickel, and she walks up, and she comes back with a lemonade, and she goes, Dad, it didn't cost 5 cents. They gave me 5 cents. And they did it to make people look at things differently. So what you thought was a lemonade stand that they're selling lemonade for a nickel, when you went and asked for a lemonade, they gave you a lemonade and a nickel.
Wow.
Just to make you look at life differently. So that was one of them.
Wow.
Another was they are friends with a charity in downtown LA. And the pastor was meeting with the head of this charity, and he said, you know, we've got a little bit of budget to give money away to charities that we like. What do you need? What can we do for you? And the guy said, listen, and it was a charity that helped men and women, homeless men and women, sort of clean up, get new clothes, and get jobs. And so he said, you know what? We get tons and tons and tons and tons of clothes donated, but we don't get shoes. He said, so if we could, you know, if you could buy us 20 pairs of shoes. Well, of course, my pastor is like, I got 5,000 people that come to all of our services all week long. We can do better than 20 pairs. So when we showed up for the gathering that weekend, what they did was he did the usual talk, and sometimes the talk is out of the Bible, and sometimes it's just about life and what's going on. And it's very informal. It's not really churchy. It's very hip and groovy. So he then started talking about this charity, and he said, I want to help this charity. And I talked to the people from our church, and we all want to help. And we decided we would ask all of you to help. And so we all think, okay, they need some money. You know, let's donate some money. And I'm expecting to say, you know, if you can give $1, give $1. If you can give 20, give 20. If you can give 100, give the usual, right? Yeah. And he says, I'm not going to ask you for money. I said, well, what are you going to ask for? He said, I want your shoes. And he said, for one day, you can walk home barefoot, because they've spent a life walking barefoot. So I want your shoes. And so I was in a gathering of about 500 people. And he said, so the service is over, and if you're so inclined, would you leave your shoes on our stage? Victoria, I got to tell you, at the end of that, it took us 15 minutes because so many people went up. There was a mountain of shoes. After 4 services, they had to rent a truck to put all the shoes in. And the very best story was, there was a woman there, an actress, and she's not like a big time, not like an A-list actress, but she's sort of an up and comer, and she'd done pretty well. And you know, it's one of those that on a Saturday with a baseball cap, you'd never recognize her. But she went up and she took her shoes off and she handed them to Erwin, the pastor. And she handed him the shoes and she said, you're not going to know what these are. but that's a $750 pair of shoes.
Wow.
And she says to him, I thought this was so great. She says to him, I guess I picked the wrong day to wear these shoes to church. And you know what he said? He said, no, you picked the perfect day to wear them.
Wow.
So that's what this church does. So I'm
That's
sure
beautiful.
if they're able to still do this, but it wasn't my church who orchestrated it. My church simply received, and they were at least 4 families that I knew of, but I think they were expecting 4 or 8 more over the next year. Like, it was pretty constant. So what they do is they just create another team, and the team would stay with the not stay with them literally, but they'd work with the family for about a year in transitioning them, teaching them English. They would get the apartments paid for. They'd get them clothes and food. And so what a lot of people ended up doing, because they wanted to donate, is they just get them Target cards. So they could always go and buy whatever they needed at Target for a year. And they'd get the kids in schools, and they'd get the parents jobs. And it was very, very cool. But it was and again, it's one of the things I like about this church. They wanted no credit for it. They did no press releases, no talking. Even within the church, whenever people got assigned to a group, they couldn't tell anybody until the family was settled.
Wow.
It was very cool. It was very, like I say, I've never had any kind of connection that way. But, and typical with this kind of group, when we heard about it, we'd say, what could we do?
Yeah.
And most of the time, the answer was not much. We've already got it taken care of. But in my case, they were having trouble finding someplace to work. And I was like, I don't know any place, but I'll ask around, and darn if we didn't find. And then what we actually found was, it was not difficult to find help through Syrians or families of people from Syria, even if they were already, had lived in the US for a generation or two, people with Syrian heritage. Just before I left the family's house, and that was the only time I was over there, a couple drove up from Orange County just to come and spend a Saturday afternoon with the family, so the family could have people that spoke the language, knew the customs, and they just drove up for an afternoon to spend 4 hours up there. It was really cool, and that gave me a real appreciation. I won't get political on you, but that's why it so bothered me that our last administration, I thought, was so unfair to people not from this country.
Yeah.
You can't have an experience like that and think that what we did was the right thing, closing our borders, and, even just as bad on the South, to separate kids from their families. I'm not saying I would have thought that was okay, but boy, did it mean a lot more to me having met a man who showed me a picture of his family on a boat.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my gosh. So.
Well, Professor, if the church does decide to continue bringing in Syrian refugees, can you reach out to me?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
in fact, you know what I will do is, the next time we do our book club, if Tracy's there, I'll ask her if she knows, because she's my insider into that
Okay.
group.
I
And
mean,
if I find out anything, I'll let you know.
We don't really need assistance with like housing and finding a job. We just want to bring our family, and we'll take care of the rest. We just want to get them visas.
Oh yeah, I'll ask. I actually haven't, other than Facebook, I haven't had any contact for maybe 2 years. So I actually want to find out myself. I'll let you know if I find out anything. I'll do that.
Okay,
Happy to do that.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Well, listen, sorry for keeping you so long with
your
my
stories
stories.
All
Well,
right.
say hi to your sister for me, and tell your parents I think they've done a great job with you too.
Thank you.
And we'll talk, and let's not let the final come and go without setting a time.
Yes. Okay. Sure.
And when that week's over, neither one of my wife and I are teaching, so our time gets a lot better.
Okay,
Then,
no
so
problem.
you know.
Anytime you're free. We don't
Okay.
want to take much of your time.
No, it won't be. I mean, it's a good. Listen, we live. We're in a house here, but we don't live in this house. This is just our office house.
Yeah.
We live a mile that way, and
Oh,
all we're
wow.
doing during COVID is working.
That's so close.
Like we're there, we're here, we're there, we're here.
Yes.
So any diversion is good. Any diversion is good.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, do take care.
All right. Likewise. Happy
we'll talk-
Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too, and we'll talk again in about 2 weeks.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
All
We'll
right.
see ya.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.